Good afternoon everyone. Hello students who all are online, please say hi, comment hi. Okay, so today we are doing what? Chapter 4 of class 6 NCERT, right? Why NCERTs are important? Because to build the foundation, basic understanding of different concepts, right? So we are covering today history class 6 chapter 4 NCERT. What is the name of the chapter? So the name is What Books and Burials Tell Us. So today we will be knowing about the information related to the book, the one of the oldest literary sources on which we are reconstructing history. Second thing is burials, right? The graves. What do these graves tell us? So we will be discussing about these things, and these books and burials tell me one thing. What kind of sources are these books and burials? Does it help us in formation of history? Because history is what? Investigation, and we reconstruct the history based on evidences, based on the archaeological remains which have been left by our ancestors, right? Who all are there? Please comment hi, so that I know that the network is okay, my voice is coming, right? Comment yes or hi. Okay, we'll start. Mary in the library, right? So she was in the library. The teacher asked the students to follow him because they were going to library for the first time. So library, books we have, right? Okay. So one of the first topic is what? One of the oldest literary sources in the world, because there were other civilizations also, and this is related to Rigvedic civilization, right? It is related to Rigvedic civilization because Rigveda was the first book which was created, right? So Rigveda is the oldest of the Vedas, right? So you may have heard about the Vedas. What are they? How many are they, right? Vedas are the sources of history, and there are 4 Vedas. 4 Vedas we have. First is Rig Veda, which is the oldest Veda. Yes or no? Next is Samved and Yajurved and Atharva Ved, right? These all Vedas, they deal with different subjects. Yes or no? Okay. And the source of the other 3 Vedas is what? Upanishad is what? Rig Ved, right? Because it is the oldest Veda. The Rig Ved, see, includes more than 1,000 hymns, right? And then these hymns are called Sukta or well said. One thing that we have to keep in mind, that these are books. Earlier it used to be transferred in what form? They were heard, they were not written, right? These Vedas were written in after ages, right? After many years they were compiled, they were written. Earlier it used to be what kind of information? Passed by hearing, right? By telling, well said, by telling each other. This was the kind of teaching that people were getting, right? These hymns are in praise of various gods and goddesses. Okay, Rigvedic hymns are in praise of various goddess and gods. So we'll be getting to know about the gods and goddesses also. So in Rig Veda, it is clearly telling us that there were 3 gods which are specially important. And how do we know about that? Because many of the time we have seen the repetitions of the names of these gods. That is why we are saying that these 3 gods were very important. First is Agni. Agni. So we see the name getting repeated. Agni was the god of fire. Next is Indra, a warrior god. Soma, a plant from which a special drink was prepared, right? Okay, is my voice audible? Type yes, so that I know that I am audible. Yes, okay. So Soma, Indra and Agni, these were the 3 Rigvedic gods that were very important. Yes, these hymns were composed by sages. Now, there were sages who used to compose these hymns. Priest, see, priest taught students to recite and memorize each syllable. So there were priests. We know that there were sages who composed these books, and then, right, there were priests who were doing what? Transferring the knowledge, reciting, students to recite and memorize each syllable, word and sentence, bit by bit and with great care. Why is it telling us that? Because this is how the Vedas were being recited. There were proper rules, right? And then most of the hymns were composed taught and learnt by men. It is clearly telling us. Most of the hymns, not all, but most were composed, right, taught and learnt by men, and then few were composed by women also. Very, very important statement. Question can come based on this statement that Rig Vedic, all of the Rig Vedic hymns were created by men, right, or men and women both. So both were taking participations, right. Rig Veda is in old or Vedic Sanskrit. So old Sanskrit, right, it is in old Sanskrit and Vedic Sanskrit, because this was the origin of Sanskrit, which is different from the Sanskrit that we know now, and it is called classical Sanskrit, right. This Sanskrit is called classical Sanskrit, and it is very different because there are rules. Sanskrit and other languages, how these languages, what do we know about these languages, what are they, do they belong to a family, right. So these languages are what? Sanskrit is a part of family of languages, right. These languages, there is a family and there are other languages also in that family. What are these languages? So this family is known as Indo-European family. Some Indian languages like Assamese, Gujarati, Hindi, Kashmiri, Sindhi, Asian languages like Persian, European languages like English, French, German, Greek, Italian, these are all the part of Indo-European languages, right, comprising the area, India, Asia, European. And then why do they belong to the same family? Because many things are common, many words are very common, that is why we say. Okay, do you notice any similarity? See, word matra, Sanskrit, ma, Hindi, mother, English, right. Other languages used in the subcontinent India belong to different families, like there are some languages which belong to Austro-Asiatic family, there are some languages which belong to Dravidian family, and then Tibetan Burman family. So these are the other kind of family. So if we talk about, see, what other languages of the subcontinent? So those used in northeast, they belong to the Tibeto-Burman family. Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, they belong to Dravidian family. And then languages spoken in Jharkhand, they belong to Austro-Asiatic family. So this is about the family of language. Okay, now the book we use, see, what is the difference? So how knowledge was passed? It was heard, it was recited, it was heard, right? Earlier, this was the system. Now what is happening? The books we use today, they are written, right, and then printed. We have this printed format of the book, right. Earlier it used to be the different kind. Rig Veda was recited. Remember this thing very clearly. Rig Veda was recited and heard rather than read. It was not written. When there was this formation, the compilation of book composed, when Rig Vedas were composed, it was not written or read, right? It was recited and heard. This was the system. It was written down several centuries after it was first composed and printed less than 200 years ago. So this is the time period, right? Next is what? Okay. How historians study the Rig Veda. It is telling us about this thing also. Historians like archaeologists find about the past, but in addition to material remain, they examine written sources as well, right? So there is this archaeological remain, first-hand account. Then there is this books. So we corroborate the information when we get the archaeological remains, the material remains, we see that, and then we see the books also. We try to corroborate the information. This is how the investigation is done, and we form history, right? And then how they read the Vedas, they study the Vedas. So some of the hymns in the Rig Veda, they are in form of dialogue. Now the structure, how Vedas are recited and what is the form in the Rig Veda. So they are formed in dialogues. There is this dialogue, this is the part 1 of such hymn, a dialogue between a sage named Vishwamitra, very important personality, and 2 rivers. So we find a dialogue between a sage called Vishwamitra and 2 rivers. They are Byas and Satluj, right? Byas and Satluj are the tributaries of what river? You guys tell me in the comment section. Okay? Okay. So, now this is what? A page from a manuscript of the Rig Veda. in the earlier chapters, this was the definition of manuscript was given. Manuscript is what? Which is written, handwritten, right? And then on birch bark or palm leaves. So this is the example. See, this is the manuscript, right? Manuscript of Rig Veda on birch bark was found in Kashmir, right? And about 150 years ago, it was used to prepare one of the earliest printed text of the Rig Veda as well as the English translation. Where is it now? In the library in Pune, Maharashtra. So this is the dialogue between the Vishwamitra and the rivers. Okay. What is the dialogue? We'll read 2-3 lines. Vishwamitra is saying, "O rivers, come down from the mountains like 2 swift horses, like 2 shining cows that lick their calves. You move like chariots to the sea through the power of Indra." So see, you will find all the important things in this dialogue. See, river is there, horse is there, and then there is this Indra, mention of Indra also, right? Okay, let's move to the next paragraph. It is telling us about the cattle, horses and chariots. What was the relevance, right? Okay, there are many prayers in the Rig Veda for cattle, for children and horses. Okay, many prayers related to them tells us the importance of these people, these cattle, these horses and the children, right? And children, especially sons. So this can be asked in UPSC. Related to Rig Veda, consider the following statement and any of the statement can be given, right? Next is horses were yoked to chariots that were used in battle. So we now know that there were battles also during the Rig Vedic times. Why Rig Veda? Because Rig Veda was composed during that time and all the things that were happening, they are the part of Rig Vedic age, right? Rig Vedic age. So we are now studying about Rig Vedic age. So there were battles also happening and horses were used, right? Who were fought to capture the cattle. So it has also told us about the purpose of the battle. The purpose was to capture the cattle. So cattle was important, horses were important and the rivers were important, right? Battles were also fought for land. See, political boundaries were not there. So battles were there for land but totally different concept, which was important for pasture. See, they are fighting for land. Why? Because of resources, because of pasture for growing hardy crops that ripened quickly, such as barley. Again, barley mentioned. Barley has been mentioned. Remember this thing? Some battles were fought for water and to capture people, right? So these were the small battles that they were fighting for. Okay. Some of the wealth that was obtained was kept by the leaders. Some were given to the priest and rest was distributed among the people. So these people were actually a part of the tribe and the composition of tribe was what? There were population, right? There were leaders. Okay, we know that there were leaders. Second, there were priests. We know that there were sages and then there was this population among whom the wealth was being distributed, right? Now, the other activity, some wealth was used for the performance of yajnas, right? Yajnas, yajna or yagya, right? Or sacrifices in which offerings were made into the fire. Yagya, yajna, sacrifices were made into fire. Hello students who all are there, send me a hi. Are you able to hear me? Okay, we are covering a Rig Vedic age, right? And we'll be dealing with all the questions, all the important statements that might come in the examination. These were meant for gods and goddesses, the sacrifices. The yajnas, they were meant for gods and goddesses. Offerings, they could include. Now it is also telling us about the offerings, what things were there in the offering, right? So what were the material, what were the things that were used? Ghee, grain and in some cases animals, right? So we know many yagnas, sacrifices that were during that time, right? Tell me the name of the yagnas during later Vedic period and Rig Vedic period. Now see, who is taking part in wars? Hello students who all are there, you can send me a hi so that I know that I am audible, right? Okay, most men, it is telling that most, not all men, most men took part in wars. There was no regular army, very important point related to Rig Vedic age, that the concept of regular army was not there. Regular army means standing army, means king used to have the army, right, to fight constant battle, but it was not during Rig Vedic period, right? And then there were assemblies also. See, no regular army is there, but assemblies are there, right? Assemblies were there to take major decision related to the tribes, to the population administration, right? People met. In that assemblies, people met and they discussed matters of war and peace, constant. Small conflicts, battles were going on for land, for pastures, for people, right? These kind of things. They also chose leaders. These assembly, the function of the assembly, they were discussing about what? Land, right? They were discussing about what? War, peace, and they were discussing about the leader. They were also choosing the leaders who were often brave and skillful warriors. This was the need of the time. The leaders provided protection and people, they in turn did what? Started paying taxes. It was voluntary in nature, right? Now, what are the terms, what are the words that we used to use for people, to describe people during Rig Vedic times, right? So these are the words. What are the words? There are several ways of describing people. What was the population basically? So in terms of the work they did, there were names given. The language that they speak, the place they belong to, their family, their communities and cultural practices. Now, there are two groups. See, clearly it is telling us that there were two groups. One was Brahmin, second was priest, right? So priests were there, sometimes they were called Brahmins, who performed various rituals, and there were Rajas. One group is of priest, second group is of Raja. Priest was doing what? Performing sacrifices, yajnas, and there was this Raja, right? Rajas were not like the ones that we know about now. Leaders, they were not like, the concept was totally different, Raja, right? And then they did not have capital, city, palaces, armies. These were tribes and they did not have capital, city, armies like today. No regular army was there, nor did they collect taxes. See, they were not collecting taxes, taxation system was not known, but yes, people voluntarily gave gifts to Rajas, right, for protection, and they were called as what? Those taxes were called as Bali, right? Taxes were voluntary gifts to Rajas, were called as Bali, okay? So generally, sons did not automatically succeed fathers as Rajas, because it has been mentioned that in the assemblies, they also chose leaders who were what? Skillful warriors, who were strong, right? So that is why this succession is not there, okay? Hereditary kind of Raja is not there, okay? They were elected, okay? Next is what? Two words were used to describe the people or community as a whole. Now, we know about the administration part that two groups were there. One was priest, who was performing the sacrifices. Second is Raja, who is doing what? Giving the protection to people and waging the war for the people, right? Now, for people, what are the two words? And the community. So, one word was Jana, very important, Jana. The word Janpad comes from Jana, right? Jana, which we still use in Hindi and other language. And the other word was wish. Very important words, right? Jana and wish. Okay, the word Vaishya comes from the wish, right? Now, several wish or Jana are mentioned by name. And then we find the reference to the Puru Jana or wish, and Bharat Jana or wish, and Yadu Jana or wish. So these Bharat, Puru, Yadu, they were what? They were the tribes, the Janpads, right? We know about the Janpada, Mahajanpada period. So they originated. These were called Janas and Mahajanpadas because of the word Jana that was used in Rig Vedic times. Now, next is what? Do any of these names sound familiar? Sometimes the people who compose the hymns, they describe themselves as Aryas, right? So this was the term that was used for the people who used to compose the hymns. Very important, right? Hello Nand Kishore and Abhishek, how are you? Very good. Focusing on studies, huh? Okay. These were the people who did not perform sacrifices. So, see, Aryas. Aryas are who? Who are composing what? Who are composing the hymns, right? Clear? Okay. Who composed the hymns were calling themselves as Aryas and called their opponents as Dasas or Dasyus. So, one thing that we have to remember is that, see, Aryan race was came to India, Rigvedic Aryans, these were Aryans, right, Aryans race, and then what happened, they were calling themselves Aryans and the opponents, the natives were called as the Dasas or the Dasyus, right. So, Dasas and Dasyus were the opponents. These were people who did not perform sacrifices. Aryans were the, or the Aryas were the people who were performing sacrifices, and Dasas and Dasyus were not performing sacrifices. It is clearly mentioning it, means that probability is there that question can be asked, right. These are very simple statement terms and then functions have been given. So, we have to give attention towards it, right, and probably spoke different languages. See, the language is also different, okay. Okay, language is also different. Later the term Dasa came to mean slave. Now we know Das, right, the word Das means what? It is referred to as for the slaves, right. So, Dasas, slaves. Slaves were women and men who were often captured in war. So, we saw that Rajas were fighting for people also, right, for pastures also, land for pastures and for people also. So, these people who were, now also we have people, prisoners of war, right. So, we have today also the people who are prisoners of war. So, these were the people who were captured in war and now they were doing what? The work for the owner, right. They were treated as the property of their owners, but there is a difference, right. What is the difference? That these were owned. Now, you cannot own any person, right. Modern India or modern world, you cannot, you do not own people, you own the property, right. But earlier, they used to own. These people were the property of those people, right, who could make them do whatever they wanted to do, and this gave them the opportunity to exploit the people, right. While the Rig Veda was being composed in northwest of the subcontinent, there were other developments elsewhere, right. So, other civilizations were also there. Now, silent sentinels, the story of the megaliths. Now, megalithic culture. Megalith, this was going on simultaneously, megalith culture, right. What is mega? Mega, the meaning of mega is what? Big, and lithic is what? Stone, right. So, megalithic, big stones, it is referred to big stone, the use of big stone. But what was the purpose of using the big stones, right? So, everything is mentioned here. Look at the illustration on the next page. This is the picture of a burial ground, right. These stone boulders are known as megaliths. These stone boulders, big stones, they were called as megaliths, literally big stones, and then these were carefully arranged by people. This was also the kind of settlement that they had, the kind of life that they were living, part of the life, part of the culture. So, that is why we are calling this megalithic culture. These were carefully arranged by people who used to mark burial sites. So, now we know that the megalithic culture is related to what? Marking the burial site. There were bodies and these people used to mark the burial sites with the big stones so that they remember that these are the sites where the bodies are, right. Okay, the practice of erecting megaliths began about 3000 years ago. So, it is also telling us about the time period. Started around 3000 years ago and then prevalent throughout the Deccan, South India. Okay, now the regions, Deccan, South India, Northeast and Kashmir, clearly telling us about the regions, the megalithic culture. Where was it present? Deccan, South India, Northeast and Kashmir, okay, and 3000 years ago, okay. Now, some important megalithic sites are shown on map 2. We will see that while some megalithic can be seen on the surface, other megalithic burials are often underground. right? Some are on the surface and others are underground, right? Next is sometimes archaeologists find a circle of stone boulders or a single large stone standing on the ground. So there were circle also, right? And then single stone was also there standing on the ground like this, right? This is the stone and this is to mark the burial site. Only single stone was there standing, okay? And then these are the only indications that there are burials beneath, right? To mark the burial place. See, this type of megalith is known as cyst, okay? Next is what? Okay. Now, all these burials have some common features. The dead were buried, okay. So there was this concept of life after death starting from Harappan civilization. People believed in life after death. So what they used to do is they used to keep some very precious or important things with the dead bodies so that they can use it in after their life, right? So this was a concept. Generally the dead were buried with distinctive pots. Pots for keeping the things, right, which were called black and red ware. So this is their art and which was called black and red ware. Now also found are tools and weapons of iron, sometimes skeletons of horses, horse equipment and ornaments of stone and gold. So we know that Harappans were not aware of iron, Harappans were not aware of horses, but what it is telling us about megalithic culture, that megalithic people were aware of iron, they were aware of horses, because we have found evidences, and this is how we construct the history, that skeletons of horses have been found, iron implements have been found, right? This is how we know. So if a question comes that megalithic people, they used to be aware of iron and horses, would this statement be correct or wrong? Tell me in the comment section. Will this statement be right or wrong? Okay. Social differences. Social differences. Was the society segregated? Was there any social difference? How do we know that? Everything is based on evidences, right? Archaeologists think that objects found with the skeleton probably belong to the dead person. More objects are found. If more objects are found, means that that person has a good status, and if less objects are found, means that there is some social difference, right? And then one skeleton was buried with 33 gold beads, 2 stone beads, 4 copper bangles, other skeleton only a few pots. This suggests us what? Difference in status among the buried, right? So there was this differentiation. Megalithic people had social differences. Next is, were some burial spots meant for certain families? Bodies were placed in the same grave, right? The bodies of those who died later were brought into the grave through how? There were holes, right? Portholes were there. So this is a grave, there would be a porthole and bodies will be then taken into the grave. Now, stone circles or boulders placed on the surface probably served as signposts. Okay. Next important thing is what? These boulders, stone boulders, were used as signposts, right? Signposts, that okay, this is the place where we'll bury the bodies of this family, right? So that people could return to the same place whenever they wanted to. Now, a special burial has been mentioned related to Inamgaon. Inamgaon is where? Which place? State? It is in Maharashtra, right? Inamgaon. It is a site on River Gode. River Gode has been mentioned, very, very important, and tributary of River Bhima. Okay, it was occupied between 3,600 and 2,700 years ago. Now, adults were generally buried in the ground, laid out straight with the head towards the north. So, head was placed towards north. Everything has been mentioned, and sometimes burials were within the houses also. So we find that burial grounds were within the houses also, right? And then vessels that probably contained food and water were placed with the dead. So this is the kind of culture that they were following, right? One man was found buried in a large 4-legged clay jar in the courtyard of a 5-roomed house, and then center of the settlement. This house also had a granary. The body was placed in a cross-legged position. So different kind of cultures also we find. Okay. Okay. Now, what skeletons studies tell us? Okay. Do we find any difference between a male skeleton and a female skeleton? So, based on the size of the bones, we find the difference. So, a better way of figuring out the sex of a skeleton is to look at the bone structure. The hip or the pelvic area of women is generally larger, right, to enable the childbearing. Occupations at Inamgaon. What were the occupation? What people were doing? Archaeologists have found seeds of wheat, barley, rice, pulses, millet, peas and sesame. These were the seeds that were found, and then bones of a number of animals, many bearing cut marks. There were animals who are bearing the cut marks. So what do they suggest us? That they might have been used for eating, for food, right? Also have been used. These include cattle, buffalo, goat, sheep, dog, horse. Okay, so these animals were what? Horse, ass, pig, sambar, spotted deer. These were the animals where we find the cut marks, right? And there is evidence that fruits such as ber, amla, jamun, dates and variety of berries have also been collected, right? So this is the kind of occupation that they were doing. Okay, now the chapter is over. We have many information related to Rig Vedic age, Rig Vedic culture, right? So what are the important information? First is that people, there were different kind of people, different occupations were there. Sages were there, priests were there, rajas were there, people were there, and their functions has also been defined, right? Properly mentioned. Now megalithic culture is there, right? Sites have been mentioned. Where do we find the megalithic culture? Go and revise it again, and then Veda, it is telling us about Veda, the language, the family of languages. In India only, we have so many languages and belonging to different families. Tell me the names of the families in the comment section. What were the language families that we discussed in the chapter? Next is hymn, right? Who were the people who were creating these hymns, and they were called what? Chariot. What was the purpose of chariot? What was the purpose of horses? Next is sacrifices. Who were the people who were performing the sacrifices, and for what purpose? Next is Raja. What was the role of Raja? Right? Slave. How do these peoples got slaves? Right? Next is, what is megalithic culture? Burial, skeletal and iron. Who were the people who were knowing about the iron technology? Everything is given, and you should revise it properly so that you can get the benefit of reading the NCERT, right? So this is for today. Now I'll meet you in the next session with a new chapter. Till then, like, share and subscribe, and be here at our live session. Thank you so much.